What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 103 of Littleroot Lessons. As always, I'm your host, Carter Noble, joined by our fantastic co-host, Carl Wilkin. What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot. We've been recording, or at least I've been recording and editing all day today, and I am starting to get brain dead.
I have not, because Tiff decided she wanted to get out and go to the store after we got like 8 inches of snow. So my plan today was to stay home and stream and do all this stuff, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to work because we got all this weather.
Let's go out and play in it."
She's like, "You're going to dog sit for my sister while she was at school, but that's not happening because she's not coming down. So instead, we get to go play in the snow." It's like, oh, okay. So as much as I would have liked to stay at home and played Pokemon all day, I couldn't. So whatever. So what are we doing this week, man?
So this week, I thought it would be fun to do some top 5 lists. The format's kind of developed. It's starting to kind of balance out. We know what's really good. We know what's really bad for the most part. And I thought it would be cool to kind of just list off some fun stuff, things that we think are good, things that we think are a little bit overrated, maybe talk about some restricted pairings, kind of just hit a bunch of bases, and get people prepared for seeing some cool stuff in Salt Lake City in a couple weeks.
For sure. For those who aren't aware, Salt Lake City regionals, the registration is open for that. You do need to be fully vaccinated, and if your vaccination is over 7 months old, you need to be with your booster shot as well. Yep. So make sure if you are planning to go to that event, you have all that stuff in line. Mask mandates, all that stuff are also required. And I believe Pokemon put out a thing this week talking about how like local events are also starting to come back, right?
I think so, or at least they've updated their COVID regulations. They had that stuff kind of already in place, but they weren't like saying go play and go do all that stuff yet. But this was kind of the first step to getting that stuff started back up for sure. To tag on to all that mask mandates, you have to have a negative test to get in as well.
I did forget about that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think it's either 1 PCR or 2 rapids, which you can get the rapids usually at the store. But if push comes to shove and you can't get those, you can always go to your local pharmacy or doctor's office. They can probably get you one for something like that. They might not. They might turn you away. So be ready for that and be ready to go and try a couple of different other places.
I know. I believe for those who are playing, the Masters Division, I think, is $50 for Utah. So, like, not completely unreasonable. That's about what I expected, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited. I don't know anything about like MSSs because I haven't ever played in one. I would like to figure out if we can get like a local scene going, because that would actually be really awesome, because that's something we don't have.
Yeah,
local players consist of me and you.
Yeah, that's something that I know. Like, if you went up to Kansas City, there were very small locals there for like 2 or 4 people. Like, they didn't really try too hard.
I know. Are you in the St. Louis VGC Discord?
Not. I am not.
So they've been after this came out, they were talking about how they were in talks with like their stores up there to get events firing again and everything else. So really excited to have all that coming back. I'm unfortunately not going to drive 3 hours for a local event. Because that's not very local in my eyes, but whatever.
We might be able to get our LGS to maybe do it, but it'd be
that's the idea. I would obviously like to talk to them about it and be like, hey, can this be something that we do? The downside is like, I think it'd work really well like Friday afternoon, but again, that's specifically for like me, where my schedule works out for that, but not everyone else's may not. So who knows? Obviously Friday night they have Magic. Saturday they already have League play for the TCG.
Yep.
And I'd love to go play in that, but I work Saturdays, so it's just not an option for me, unfortunately.
Yep. So maybe doing a weekday evening thing, maybe after like 4 o'clock, something like that. Because it wouldn't take too terribly long. Games usually go
No, it
pretty
wouldn't.
quick.
Especially if we can actually, especially like the first month or so, just be like, all right, here's what these are. Actually get a crowd coming to them, even if it's just 8 people. That's still more than what we had before. So
Yeah.
I would like to, but I'm not sure if that's an actual possibility or anything else. So, obviously something I'm going to talk to them when I go up there. So,
yeah. Push comes to shove, I'm pretty sure somewhere in Kansas City would probably do it.
For sure. So, top 5 lists?
Let's get in these top 5 lists here.
And, I'm assuming in the nature of top 5 lists, we're going to do honorable mentions and then 5 to 1.
Yes, that is how this will work.
Good. I wanted to make sure because some people, do you listen to Brainstorm Brewery?
No.
So it's a magic finance podcast. I put that very loosely.
I love the big air quotes there.
Like that's what it used to be all about. Is like using magic to make money, blah blah blah. But anymore, it's just like all the guys telling stories, and like they still do their segments, which are their finance aspect. But it's just like basically taking whatever Wizards is doing at the time and shitting on it. So it's pretty
that's
great.
what we did for about a year. So.
Yep.
I think all Magic podcasts have become that now.
But they were doing something a while back, and it was literally this week. I guess the newest set is considered the most wordy set of all time. And so they're like, all right, I'm gonna read through this list. Number 1, this, and they're like, wait, you can't start a top 5 list at number 1. That's stupid. What are you doing?
Yeah, you can't do that.
So, it's really convenient that this week was when I was listening to that, so it just made me think of that. But what do we want to start with? We have 3 different lists here. What do you want to start with, man?
Let's start with our restricted pairings list here. Honorable mentions to go out here. We both got one, essentially. We kind of come to the consensus on our top 5s. That way we weren't talking about 20 items in like one segment.
Yeah.
But our honorable mentions, we each get one. What was your honorable mention?
Mine is Palkia plus basically whatever at this point. I honestly think that Palkia is very good in this format, in a format where like Zacian is starting to potentially drop play rough for other attacks, such as like Substitute or like Wild Charge, depending on the build. Where Zacian is starting to drop this fairy coverage, you can actually really see that Palkia lines up pretty well into like the rest of the format. Being able to take resisted hits from Kyogre, ignoring Intimidate from Incineroar and just like punching it extremely hard. Like Eliki obviously still dunks on you, but you also don't have anything that like triggers Defiant on Thundurus for the most part. So like I think Palkia is really underrated, and I'm just not sure exactly what to pair with it at this point to make it into the top 5, basically.
Well, the obvious answer would be Zacian, right?
I mean, that really is true. And like even when we were going through this list, it's just like, all right, we can't have all 5 of these be Zacian teams.
I mean,
so like
we can. But...
In reality, it's literally Zacian plus pick a restricted. But for the sake of like content, I don't think that's good content.
Yeah. We kind of had to reach a consensus on certain things. So Zacian is on this list a lot, but not as much as it probably should be. Correct.
Your honorable mention.
My honorable mention is Xerneas plus Groudon. I think Xerneas has a lot going for it right now. The fact that there is a second restricted to pair alongside this thing means that you can have a maxable restricted and then Xerneas be a non-max restricted, kind of like how you treat Zacian or Zamazenta or Eternatus on your teams. And I think the fact that Xerneas just lines up decently well into Kyogre if it gets its Geomancy boost up. Kyogre's not really doing a whole lot into this thing, which kind of helps Groudon out a little bit. And then the games where Zacian's there, Groudon checks that really, really well. So they kind of go back and forth with each other. There's real good things and real good synergies there. So that's my honorable mention. I don't know where the team's supposed to be at right now. I have a showdown team built and it is terrible. There's nothing good about that team. unfortunately.
That's a
But it's
pairing that
fun.
I've been wanting to work on and just have not sat down and actually played games with. Is like Xerneas plus Groudon, Xerneas plus like Ho-Oh. Just really anything that can like take a stab hit from anything that can like reasonably take it while switching into the Xerneas slot. Cali Shadow is like another really common one to pair with Xerneas because like you're just like super hyper offensive, and then once that goes down, you have Xerneas in the back that can set up on them. So
Yeah.
I think Xerneas is good. I think it's really hard to play in a format where the top Pokemon is 60% played and it one shots you.
Yeah, you definitely have to play around Zacian really, really well.
Yep.
Which, honestly, it's easy enough to do. Zacian checks a lot of restricteds really well, and you have to eventually learn how to play around them anyway.
Dude, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think Zacian just should not be legal in like future formats. I just
cut it.
It's so oppressive, man. It really is.
Series 13, before we get Gen 9, is a ban list where Zacian, Incineroar, Kyogre, Regieleki, and Grimmsnarl are taken off the game. just like, cut them all.
Yep, take the top 10 from both singles and doubles and just cut them.
Yep.
And see, if we did that, we lose those 5: Thundurus, Venusaur, Rillaboom, Landers, and Amoonguss. So like here's every check for Kyogre as well as Kyogre itself. Here's Zashian plus like everything that goes well with it.
Yep. Just take them all out.
Let's see. I would like to see if we take Battle Stadium singles, Ditto gets banned.
I saw Ditto. I saw Zapdos.
Urshifu Dark. Yveltal,
no
Duskmane,
Landorus. No Lando. Ooh.
Mimikyu, and Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is number 10. Eternatus stays in because it's number 11. Hell yeah.
So we lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 restricteds?
5 restricteds.
I'm pretty okay with that.
Yeah. You can just take Cali Shadow with
6.
you too.
Oh, no, yeah, because Cali Shadow actually holds on.
Yeah, Cali Shadow holds on, but you can just take it with you. That's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Take it with you.
Landers is on there twice. You go ahead and just ban Cali Shadow too.
Yeah.
ban like the 3 genies.
just let's roll back to Series 5 and just have the extended decks, no legends, no restricteds, just a fair and square format, man. That was so much fun.
What didn't we have that
That was our draft league, our fair and square draft league. That was the one just before this one.
Man, that format was really good.
Yeah, that was
it was really enjoyable to play. It's like if you take RTT and just make it a little stronger. But like I also really like the power level that Redeem the Trash is at currently. Mm-hmm. Like removing weakness policy is also a really big deal, and I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
I think the only other change you could probably make to change the power balances a little more is ban like Life Orb and Eviolite. I think if you ban one, you had to ban the other.
If you ban Eviolite, the power level goes way down.
Yeah,
a lot of these not fully evolved mons get much worse.
Things like Torracat are just like whatever at this point.
Yeah, they're not usable really at all.
Yeah. So I don't see Eviolite ever getting banned. I could see Life Orb just because I think it is really, really good. Mm-hmm. I also could see like I think RTT without Dynamax would be really interesting too.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a really fun format.
Yeah.
Just like DPP style and just punch them.
Yeah.
So
we're getting sidetracked here though.
Number 5.
Number 5 is kind of off the wall. Lunala Groudon. So I don't know how much you've seen of these Lunalodon teams. They're starting
this
to
one.
pick
This
up.
one is all you. You were very adamant about putting this one on the list.
So they're not very common, mainly due to the fact that Kyogre kind of just eats Groudon alive. Cali Shadow kind of eats Lunala alive. But what they do, they work together really well. One of the big things that is missing from most of these teams is like good Trick Room answers. If you look at Zacian Beltel teams, they're mostly all fast. If you look at Zacian Kyogre, all fast. Calirex Zacian, all fast. So having things like Lunala and Groudon means that you can play a slower, longer game plan with things like Wide Guard and Gravity. If you want to do like Dusclops things there's some synergies with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is number 5 because I think this is where the format is heading into trying to deal with things like this, where the game gets slowed down a lot, your damage gets reduced because things like Grimmsnarl exist, and you kind of have to draw this game out a little bit longer, and things like Lunala and Groudon can shine a little bit more.
So in that same vein, at number 4, I have Cali Ice plus Kyogre, and the everything that you're saying about like Lunala, I think is very true for Cali Ice, except that Cali Ice punches really, really, really hard too.
You just go burr, right? You just click the buttons and just go.
Click Trick Room, click blow them up.
Exactly.
Like that's the combination. And like you can still have a fast mode with like Kyogre plus Tornadus, which is obviously very good, something we've seen for years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think adding in Calyrex as like a slow mode really does change the pace of gameplay and can really just abuse these setups where like sure they have Zacian, but they can't really attack into me because if they do, they just get blown up first because I underspeed them.
Yeah.
So, like, sure, you are threatened by Zacian. Incineroar obviously is a big problem for you as well, but like, just trigger your policy and then KO something, and next thing you know, Incineroar's -1 doesn't matter. You can still just one-shot them.
And Kyogre checks Incineroar really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like
if you're worried about them leading Zacian and Incineroar, lead Kyogre instead and blow them up.
Yeah, just lead the Kyogre and it just takes care of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like having that slow and that fast mode that works with Lunala Groudon too, because you get things like Venusaur.
Yep, exactly.
You get to play the fast game with Venusaur and can pivot around with that. And my big issue with the Sun teams right now, and why I think they're a little bit worse than everything else, in general, is just the sheer fact that you're really reliant on your moves to hit. Like, if you're not feeling lucky that day, don't play Sun.
That's very, very accurate.
Like, you have to hit every single move. Every move you hit matters, and every time you miss, it puts that game just farther out of reach.
I think it was in the Rumble. I played against a Sun team that had Hurricane Charizard. It was like, how lucky are you feeling? Like, obviously, you want the most powerful Airstream, so playing Hurricane makes sense. But at the same time,
I don't think the 10 base power is worth it, man. At that point, I don't think it's worth it.
I almost lost that game because Hurricane got the confusion, and I hit myself.
I mean, yeah.
It came down to my Incineroar living on 8 HP to pick up the KO on their Thundurus.
Well, there you go. You got it.
It was a really good game. That tournament was really fun.
Yep.
So, from here on out, I feel like everything we say about Zacian is going to be pretty obvious. So, these last 3 pairings are all Zacian teams.
Yep.
And I feel like their role in the team is all pretty standard. So I feel like we're just going to talk about the restricted that's paired with them and like what they add in like team preview and team build as well. So moving in at number 3 is Zashian Kali Shadow.
So obviously this duo is just hyper offense to a T, super duper fast, outspeeds pretty much everything outside Regieleki. If you have Tailwind, you just go even faster. Neither really have to Dynamax to do their thing, so you get to play really strong like Gmax options like Blastoise, like Charizard, like Colossal, and things like that, where you can do chip damage, or you can play things like Lapras and get that Aurora Veil up, draw the game out a little bit longer, help your Kali Shadow survive more hits and things like that.
The other thing that this duo is able to do really well is it's just like the common pairing for your Weezing Gigas teams as well, because they really want to turn off all your abilities and like the abilities on Calirex and Zashian don't really matter all that much in hindsight. Like, or you can do the thing with like Zacian and have Intrepid Sword activate, switch in Wheezing, turn it off,
and then turn it back on.
Yeah, get it turned back on to get another boost as well. It's basically playing with Ditto in a sense where you're able to get 2 boosts instead of 1 off of your ability. Cali Shadow also is just like you said, pretty efficient. Able to play it with like Whimsicott usually as your Tailwind setter for the most part, because Fake Tears is also very powerful.
Yep.
If it facilitates his with Regieleki as well in that sense. Speaking of like strong Dynamax targets, because you have Zacian on your team, you're going to be weak to Intimidate, so you can play like Thundurus as a Defiant Mon and just like really incentivize them not to bring Incineroar, which beats up
Shadow.
Beats up Zacian and like completely walls Cali Shadow. So having something to incentivize them not to bring Insane is really good. In the same vein, that's why, like you were talking about with Blastoise, it does something very similar where it just incentivizes them not to bring Incineroar because it's just going to end up getting one shot basically.
Yeah.
I think that's like a pretty good descriptor of like what that pairing is trying to do for the most part.
Oh yeah, like it's very on its face, like what it's wanting to do. Like it's obviously like we're gonna go fast. We're gonna hit you really hard. What's great about that pairing too is like Cali S is just really good into opposing Zacians as well. You're usually carrying Sash, so you'll take 1 hit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You outspeed them every time, so you can get like a Will-O-Wisp off into them. So definitely can take advantage of a lot of what's going on with Cali Shadow and the Zacian combo and just push your advantage even more. Next,
so then in a very similar vein of click the button, do the thing. Number 2 we have Zashian Kyogre.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more iffy.
Haha, do the thing.
Yeah, like this one there's no Will-O-Wisp, there's no support moves you really want to play. You kind of just want to click the button, go fast, blow them up kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that bulky Kyogre starting to make an appearance is a little bit more common thing, but
yeah, the Assault Vest Kyogre version is like at 17% here. Leftovers is down here at 9% according to Pikalytics at this point. So playing bulky Ogre is like a thing of my nightmares, and I hate it.
Like those are starting to become more common. But most of the time with these sets, you're like Mystic Water or Sea Incense or Choice Scarf, just trying to hit everything as hard as you possibly can. Your max targets are usually like Regieleki, Zapdos, stuff like that. Yeah.
A Rain Abuser may be like Kingdra, Ludicolo, Seismitoad, something like that.
You could even max Tornadus. Like those sets, there's sets that Tornadus gets to just sit there and max in front of it, and once you set Tailwind, you just go burr with like max Airstreams and just make sure that you outspeed every time.
Yeah, I've been playing Grass Knot Tornadus, and it's just like firing off a max Overgrowth from Tornadus, people just don't expect ever.
No one sees it coming.
No, and it's great into opposing Kyogres. Groudon doesn't really care for it, and like you, even because Zacian is fairly heavy, like if you get him on the swap, it still just does a chunk as well.
Yeah. One of the cool things about the Zacian Kyogre teams too is just like how versatile it can be, like with your picks. You're not locked into certain mons. You're kind of locked into certain type fillers. Like you want a designated grass type. You want a designated electric type. You want a designated Tailwind setter. You want a designated Intimidator, whatever. And then you have your Zacian and your Kyogre. And so you kind of get to fill this team out into whatever you need it to be. If you really want, like if you're really having problems against things like Zapdos, you can play Landorus instead of Incineroar. If you're really struggling with like Intimidate, you can play Thundy instead of Zapdos. Tornadus not getting your Tailwinds up fast enough, play Whimsicott. That's an option for you. If you want a second Steel type, you can play Ferrothorn. If Ferrothorn's not good enough, you can play something like Kartana. Or you can even play Venusaur on your rain teams. I've seen that enough to where you could just like Well, I have Heat Wave on my Zapdos, so I can set Sun and then bring in Venusaur. And now Venusaur gets to outspeed everything and do the Sleep Powder, whatever shenanigans I want it to do. So I feel like the Zacian Kyogre teams are probably some of the more flexible teams, just because the restricteds are, they don't need a whole lot to help them get going. Whereas things like Cali Ice wants a Trick Room setter and kind of relying on that. Calirex Shadow really needs Tailwind to kind of make sure that you just don't get bopped by opposing Tailwind. So you kind of feel pigeonholed into that. Usually Whimsicott's the best one for that. So you're kind of just stuck with that. Whereas like the Zacian Kyogre teams, you can play Tornadus, you can play Whimsicott, you can play Talonflame, you can play whatever Prankster Tailwind setter you want to play and probably be fine for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, I had this at my number 1, and after talking with you, we mutually agreed to move it down to number 2, but I definitely think that this is easily the most, like, one of the easier ones to pick up and play at the very beginning. It's very beginner friendly while also having a lot of nuance to help you learn the format. Yeah. I've had multiple people here lately. They're like, "Hey, I haven't played this format. What do I start with?" I'm like, "This is it. Just play these duo. Yeah. Go find a rental of this team and play it until you're good."
I would 100% recommend this if you are needing a team to like look at or team to start playing with. Zacian Kyogre is definitely where you want to start.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
On the flip side of that, the number 1 team I don't recommend for newer players.
No, this team is very difficult.
This is one of probably the harder duos to play with, and that's Zacian Beltel. This is one of those teams with a very, very, very high ceiling and a very, very, very low floor. You will either smash everyone if you're really good with it, or lose every single game because you just can't play it.
And see, I had been working on Zacian Beltel for a hot minute for USPA, and I eventually talked myself out of it because I didn't like where the team was ending up. I just felt like everything around those two felt very mediocre, and I know you've been playing it for the last like 2 weeks now, and your version was way better than anything I had going on. I will tell you that for free.
And even my version is suboptimal compared to what these teams actually are. So the reason these teams do so well is because you have 1,000,000 checks to Zacian, but you also have 1,000,000 checks to anything that Zacian loses to.
Yep.
So this team usually is carrying things like Gastrodon, Rotom Heat, Grimmsnarl. You're not too worried about where or when you're going to max, because a lot of the time you're trying to draw the game out and just chip away at your opponent. That's what Yveltal Zacian is really good at, is if once you get a speed advantage, just chip away at your opponent. Use Snarl, use your screens. In the case of things like Rotom Heat, use Will-O-Wisp. Gastrodon, use Yawn. There's a lot of tools that make that team very, very strong. Like my version's using Blastoise. That's an adjustment that I've made that I like more than anything. It's just more fun stuff for me. But if you do pick this team up, like I know JojoX9 played and piloted that team really, really well. There was a version with like Bronzong and Tapu Koko on it for a while. That sounds hot. That team was really cool. But there's definitely a standardized version of this team that is just anti-meta. Try and just it benefits you for playing really well, but if you play it really badly, you fall flat on your face.
You get bodied.
There's no safety net for this team like a Zacian Kyogre team would have. Like Kyogre and Zacian or Calirex and Zacian are really, really good at just having safety nets. You could fall back, and Calirex Shadow usually will carry you through a game. Yveltal can't do that. Yveltal's good, but it's not fantastic like that. And so the reason this is number 1 is because just the potential for such a high ceiling is there. But do not recommend playing this like as your first team. If you're going to pick something up, pick up Zacian Kyogre, pick up Calirex Shadow Kyogre, Zacian, Calirex Eye Kyogre. Like all three of those are real good beginner friendly teams. They're very on their face what they're trying to do. Zacian Beltel, I would, if you really want to work on it by yourself for a very long time.
Yep, get really good with it and be able to answer any question that anyone ever has about it.
Yeah.
So that brings us to let's do the top 5 underrated non-restricted Pokemon in this format.
This is going to be a fun one because there's a lot of underused Pokemon that are really, really cool.
So the criteria of what we considered underused was that anything according to Pikalytics that is, in our opinion, not being played enough based on the percentage that it has. So, just for an example, Zashian at 60%, you could say, that's really undervalued because it's the best Pokemon in the game. Everyone should be playing this or have an answer to it in some capacity. For the record, for spoiler alert, Zashian is not on this list. That's an exaggeration. Please stop playing it. I hate it. So my honorable mention here is a Pokemon that's very near and dear to my heart, and I've played quite a bit, and I've tried to make work in this format, and that's Entei. Entei, I think, is very unique, being able to have access to a lot of very powerful moves, such as like Sacred Fire. You have extreme speed to be able to pick up KOs. You have access to Snarl, so you can do like Super Snarl Bros things. That's something that you and I worked on in Series 7, 8, forever ago at this point.
Whatever it was, like Incineroar Entei or Incineroar Raikou, whatever it was.
Yep, forever ago at this point.
It feels like it was, at least.
The sets that I had been playing with were all Choice Scarf. The problem is even under Choice Scarf, you're still being outsped by opposing Kyogres in Tailwind, because +2 is better than +1. Who would have ever guessed? So you're not able to fire off like a Snarl or anything before Kyogre just one-shots you thanks to Water Spout. So I think that as like a answer to Zacian that's also immune to Fake Out and Intimidate from Incineroar, there's a lot to like about Entei, but just not enough where I feel like it's super underrated. But I think it's something that people need to keep on their radar for where the format, I think, is going to develop to.
Yeah. Sticking with fire types, this Pokemon is seeing a lot of play in Series 10 when we didn't have Dynamax, and I think it's set for a comeback. Volcarona. So Volcarona's on this list as like the fun fire bug that we know. It's a very good check into opposing Zacian. Unfortunately, you just get blown up by Kyogre and sometimes Groudon. But the big thing is there's no Colossal running around to hurt your little moth, sun moth here. So
very true.
That was the big perpetrator of why Volcarona kind of just fell off after we went back to Dynamax. Was just the sheer number of Colossal just running around just keeps it at bay. And now that Colossal's kind of not really a thing anymore, you still see it, but it's not as prominent as it was. Especially, and rock coverage in general is not very popular right now. Volcarona can definitely shine on the right teams. I remember seeing it on one of these, like, I think it was one of Cybertron's teams he played. It had Volcarona and Blastoise on it, and it was super duper cool. You get to redirect any kind of grass move or electric move into your Blastoise into it instead, and kind of just like use it as a pivot and whatnot. So it was really cool. And having that flame body ability to get a lucky burn on a Zacian, tank a Behemoth Blade or whatever, it's just the icing on the cake for it there.
Oh, for sure. So at number 5, something that you actually kind of mentioned in a little bit there, is Lapras. And I think Lapras is really underutilized because screens are very good, as we've seen with the return of Grimmsnarl, I should say.
Yeah, we get it back.
Bulky water types that are very resistant to Kyogre are also very good. Having something that can also take hits from like opposing Cali Shadows is good. Being able to potentially change weather on like Groudon is good. There's a lot to really like about Lapras. The biggest problem about it though is there's the biggest checks to it that have always existed. Rillaboom and Regieleki. The fact that these two Pokemon still exist and are still very widely played makes Lapras way less appealing than it has been previously.
Yeah. I am a big proponent of Lapras. I love it to death. One of the issues I have with it right now is that you're not resistant to Steel. So
Very true.
You take neutral damage from Behemoth Blade, and the fact that you're wanting to max this Pokemon that has fairly low average defense means that Zacian can usually get you with a double up if you're not careful, and you're not usually fast enough to avoid that double up.
Mm-hmm.
So Lapras needs a ton of support, but on the right teams can easily take over.
I agree. I agree. Moving in here at number 4, we have something that you've definitely been working on quite a bit, and honestly, it feels like one Pokemon that you just always come back to at some point in every format. We have Alolan Marowak.
So Alolan Marowak, or Alolan as we're just going to probably friendly call it here, it's probably one of the best Zacian checks in the game right now.
Not only is it a extremely well like Zashian counter, you also beat up on like the restricted Trick Room Pokemon as well.
Yeah, you get to eat them alive for the most part. One of the things I found with Alolan Marowak is you're fairly bulky. You don't have to put anything in your defense because your defense is naturally high. You don't have to invest all the way in attack because you have things like Thick Club to run on it to double your attack. So you get to invest into your bulk fairly well, and like you can eat Astral Barrage from 252 Timid Calirex Shadow. When you Dynamax, you can eat things like opposing like Max Quakes from Groudon, or like Max Rock Falls from like Solgaleo, Max Quake from Calirex Ice, and then you underspeed it in Trick Room so you can blow it up before it ever gets to touch you, kind of situation. But where this thing shines is the fact that it's just like, I'm going to eat every electric attack that you ever want to throw at me because I have Lightning Rod. I get to block fighting type attacks into my like steel types or into my dark types. I get to block normal type attacks that would be a problem, things like Regigigas. We get to block pretty much any kind of fairy type move because we're resistant to fairy. Fire Ghost is a very strong typing that doesn't get to see a lot of play because it's on things like Chandelure.
And Typhlosion.
We don't have that yet. Not in this gen.
True.
But Fire Ghost is a very strong typing, just both offensively and defensively. You're like we said, you wall a Zacian so well. You can eat Behemoth Blades. You're immune to Sacred Sword. You eat Play Rough. If they're running Wild Charge, you can't touch you there. If they're running Solar Blade, you eat that. Like, the only things that they can hit you with are, like, if they're running Crunch or Dig. And those
last time I checked, those are not played.
Dig is, like, the only one I've seen a little bit usage of, and it's, like, 1% of Zacian's probably.
I've literally didn't even know it had access to it. That's how little I've ever seen it.
So Alolan Marowak is probably just like this. It's the super underrated fire type. I think it's really, really strong. You get access to like rock coverage, ground coverage, ghost coverage, ice coverage, electric coverage. Granted, most of those are all in the special side, but if you're getting lightning rod boosts, it don't matter. So just, I think this Pokemon's super underrated. Very, very surprised that no one's really explored this thing. And I'm gonna put it on the map. That's my goal. I'm at least gonna put it on the map somewhere.
That's the plan, right?
Yep.
So moving in at number 3, this is another Pokemon that you've been playing a lot with here lately. We have Blastoise.
So this is probably, I think Blastoise, even though Kyogre is so popular, is probably the best of the Gmax starters right now.
I agree. I think Venusaur is good. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, I think Charizard's kind of not great. And I honestly think that, after we played, we've had our first showdown of Series 12 this past, actually yesterday. It would have gone up yesterday. Yeah. Go check that out. you played Blastoise Alola, and it went really well. You know, like you kind of talked about in that video, Blastoise doesn't really need to worry about like one-shotting things. Your job with Blastoise is to just set up and do as much chip damage to everything as possible.
Yeah. Like Max Cannonade will hit most Pokemon, because when the most popular water type is Kyogre, no one else wants to run a water type. Like Gastrodon sees play because Kyogre sees play, but you can play around Gastrodon. When you see Gastrodon, you just never click Cannonade until it's taken care of. But for things like Kyogre still takes a chunk from Cannonade.
Mm-hmm.
It still takes that decent amount of chunk. Plus, you can change the weather on Kyogre, take all the hits that it wants to throw at you for the most part. If they're running Thunder, that's what a Alola on the team is for. You could also run things like Raichu or something like that, some kind of lightning rod there if you're really worried about it. But Blastoise's job isn't to pick up KOs. Its job is to sit there, be a target, and start chipping away at your opponent via changing it to Hail or doing Max Cannonade things. That's all it's supposed to do.
In most games, both.
Yeah. And then outside of Dynamax, you have Fake Out, Yawn, Helping Hand. You have access to things like weird coverage like Flash Cannon, Dark Pulse.
I was going to say because you had Mega Launcher in your Mega form, you had what's it called? Dark Pulse and Flash Cannon. You don't get like Energy Ball or anything really weird, right? But we do get Terrain Pulse.
Yes, Terrain Pulse is on there.
That'd be. I ran into Terrain Pulse Xerneas, and now I'm just like, man, I want to play this on something.
That seems spicy. My team's playing Rillaboom, so that might be some kind of cool coverage tech to have. It's just
for sure.
Here's my grass move, or here's my electric.
Who is ready
move.
for this one?
Yeah. So that's just something kind of cool. But yeah, Blastoise. I'm currently running a Life Orb set, and it's suboptimal at best. I think the best sets are like Wakan Barrier AV 100% of the time.
I think AV is really good, because then you do have access to those coverage moves as well. You get potentially like Dark Pulse to be able to check Cali Shadow. You can have access to, if you really wanted something like that, you could have Terrain Pulse, and then you're able to check like Kyogre as well. I think that's actually something you should look into.
Maybe. If I got to pick one though, I would probably play Wakan so I can have access to Yawn.
Mm-hmm.
I think Yawn Protect, like Hydro Cane and Fake Out, is a real good set. So the second one we kind of cheated. Second place is kind of a cheat.
Well, in reality, I mean, you know, I think it's well deserved. At number 2 we have Weezing and Gigas, because one isn't nearly as good without the other.
And we're talking about Gigas isn't nearly as good without Weezing, right?
Correct. Okay. Weezing is fine, but it definitely benefits a ton from having something really, really powerful such as Regigigas to pair with it.
I think Weezing's actually better than fine. Weezing's really good on just like being able to turn off abilities. Like teams who are reliant on Prankster are you just can't do that anymore. You get to lead like Weezing Zacian or Weezing Cali Shadow. Turn off your opponent's abilities as one gets to stay on, and you can sweep through teams that way. And so like I said, it removes the Prankster things. It removes Intimidate. It removes Dark Aura as well. That's something you don't have to worry about anymore. So then the damage rolls become a little wonky for Yveltal. Weezing gets access to Will-O-Wisp, which is huge. You get access to Taunt. You get to hit fairy types with Sludge Bomb. You get access to like Flamethrower and Heat Wave. Weezing definitely can shine in a format where Groudon isn't around every single corner.
Agreed. And even if it is really popular, you have access to like Shuka and just doing that.
Yep. The downside is everyone's running ground coverage for Zacian as well, so that almost every team will have some way to hit your Weezing super effectively.
Which is unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah. Gigas is fine. Like, it's a real good Dynamax target. And like you mentioned earlier with the Calirex Shadow and Zacian teams, it's a real good pairing on there because you don't really want to max either of them, but you almost always want to max Regigigas. So you can usually get away with that kind of thing and just blow people up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if there's anything else to say about that one. It's just like Weezing's the highlight. Gigas is kind of just tagging along, being pulled by its coattails.
Gigas is just kind of there.
Yeah, Gigas is just like on Weezing's coattails going up the ladder here.
That's very true. And then to round out our top 5 here, in number 1, we have Gastrodon. This is kind of where we set the bar of what kind of like usage percent do we want this list to have. And honestly, I think Gastrodon, I believe it's currently at like 7.8%. And I think that's really, really low for how good it is in this format.
Definitely criminally low for Gastrodon. Gastrodon
Agreed.
checks Zacian really well. It checks Kyogre really well. And Zacian Kyogre are the 2 most popular restricteds. Regieleki can't touch you. Like, you just have to fear Rillaboom Venusaur. That's the only thing you have to be scared of. You eat everything else outside of like Lapras Freeze Dry.
Mm-hmm.
And Lapras isn't played that much, so you don't have to worry about that. But definitely think Gastrodon is criminally underplayed. Much lower than it probably should be. I think it probably should be at least 15% usage by now.
Yeah, I honestly think that if Gastrodon gets popular, you're just going to see more Rillabooms pop up, which then adds in like Serena as like a counterplay to all that. So
yeah, we get to see the cool synergies there.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
I think that as it currently stands, the format is Gastrodon's for the taking. I think that it is very good, and I think not nearly enough people are playing it right now.
Hard agree on that one.
So that rounds out our underrated non-restricted Pokemon. So that brings us to our last category here of our most overrated Pokemon in this format. I believe you have a honorable mention here for me.
Oh yeah, so I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this probably. I think Solgaleo is just hot garbage. I think this thing is terrible right now. Everything it wants to do, Zacian does better. And you don't have to Dynamax it. Yep. You don't have to invest in setting it up. You don't have to worry about your Beltel coming in and just OHKOing you because you activated your policy and then it outspeeds you.
Like, well, as we learned, Dark Aura is really good at being able to deal with foul play and just one-shotting you.
Yeah, like we did the calcs for it. It was
in the showdown
49% after you were at +3 to OHKO you with foul play. It's insane. It should never be that way. So Solgaleo's on my list is overrated. This thing sits at what? Like
I believe it's like
5.
Oh, I have it pulled up.
It's 5.4, which honestly isn't a lot. But when you look at restricteds and see what's there, it's like Zacian Crowned, Kyogre, and then Calirex Shadow, Yveltal, Groudon, Calirex Ice. This thing's still in the top 10 of restricteds being used. This thing shouldn't be there. I think Lunala is much better than Solgaleo and should be way above this thing.
So then that leads to my honorable mention, and as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, I think Charizard kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. Kinda is a strong word.
I believe Charizard right now is at 7% usage, 7.1.
Yep.
And I think that is insanely high. As a guy who has tried to play Charizard in a format with Regieleki in it before, you just die.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter. Regieleki is able to just deal with you. Kyogre is able to take away your weather and like take every hit from you ever while also one-shotting you. Mm-hmm. Thundurus does not care.
Yep.
You're
no care is given.
So like goodbye.
Yep.
Venusaur outspeeds you, puts you to sleep. Landorus is able to potentially take a hit if they're like Assault Vest, and then one-shot you back with Rock Slide. Like, you just don't do enough, man.
The fact that people can deal with you without having to max is the big thing.
Agreed.
You don't want to invest in enough bulk to make it worth it. Like, you could run Assault Vest Charizard, and I think that's probably the best set for it right now. But you definitely struggle when Pokemon like Regieleki and Venusaur don't have to max to deal with you. That leads us into our top 5.
So at number 5,
another Pokemon will probably get a lot of flack for here.
This one, let me clarify, this was mostly Carl, but I slightly agree with him. We have Amoonguss. I think Amoonguss can do a lot. I think Amoonguss is very, very good. And I honestly think even at like, it's just under 18% usage, I don't think people are playing it correctly. I think in a format that has this huge power ceiling to it, I feel like Amoonguss just doesn't do enough for the spot that it's taking. And so you're going to need to rely on it to do... like, its item is really what takes Amoonguss from, like, okay to good, I think. The 65% of people who are playing Copa Berry, I think, are wrong.
So the reason I wanted Amoonguss on this list is Amoonguss is good when Trick Room is good.
Mm-hmm.
Because Amoonguss underspeeds the Trick Room mods, the Trick Room restricteds. It underspeeds every single one of them. Calirex Shadow, Lunala, you name it, it's going to underspeed it. So when they go to set up Trick Room, you get to just do your Amoonguss thing, put them to sleep, the game's pretty much over. You get to stall out their Dynamax, do whatever. The format is too high-powered and too fast for Amoonguss to safely do anything.
Agreed. I think if you're playing Amoonguss right now, you have to be Sash. And I don't think there's any way around it.
And then most of the time, you still just get blown up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because they respect Amoonguss enough to just spread damage, break your Sash to blow you up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're good into Zacian because you get to take a Behemoth Blade, but like, if the Zacian's running like Fire Fang or some other weird neutral hit move at +1, I don't know if you survive that every time. Like, after a double up like that.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Zacian Yveltal being like one of our favorite pairings. Yveltal's really good into Amoonguss, and that's why you run Koba, so you don't eat max Airstreams and get blown up.
I think Amoonguss is good. I think there's a lot to say about where it needs to be in a format. And like, if Amoonguss becomes that much better, you're going to see things like Feeny rise up. You're going to see, like Lumberry become that much more popular. You're going to see Safety Goggles return as like a really popular item. And that's saying something because like, I think Safety Goggles already is still pretty good. So, I'm okay with where Amoonguss is. I think it has a lot of room to grow. But as of now, I think it's pretty okay.
I think Gastrodon is better than Amoonguss.
I agree with that. I will agree with that.
That's kind of where this list started. Was like I think Gastrodon should be where Amoonguss is at, and Amoonguss should be where Gastrodon is at. With the way the format is right now.
That's not the world we live in currently, unfortunately. So that means I think I'm ready to move on to number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4, for some reason this is being played still. We have Dragapult.
Why? Why are we playing this?
I don't get it, dude. You're not the fastest thing anymore. You're outsped by Cali Shadow, you get one shot. You're outsped by Zashian, which one shots you. You're outsped by Eliki, which just doesn't care about you. Like,
I have to see. I have to do some checks here. I'm interested in how much, oh my goodness, Behemoth Blade eats us alive.
Yep, not surprised, man. Genuinely not surprised. It's not a resisted hit. Why wouldn't it?
Oh my goodness. There's no way we can really survive this without taking away a lot of our offensive pressure.
Yeah, unless you're Sash and can Will-O-Wisp it, it doesn't matter. Or you're Scarf and you Will-O-Wisp it, and then, like, what are you doing with yourself?
Yeah, and then you just have a scarfed on Will-O-Wisp Dragapult. Like, fun fact, max HP for defense still gets OHKO'd 100% of the time by Behemoth
Good
Blade.
lord. Yep, just sit down. You're not worth it. You're not worth the spot investment.
The fact that it's like it hits you so hard without even having to worry about trying to hit a play rough. Like,
Yep.
You'd think play rough would be the problem. No, it's Behemoth Blade. Behemoth Blade's the problem. You can't max in front of this thing because it just hits you and blows you up. Not to mention Calirex Shadow just sitting there looking at you funny. Yveltal sitting there waiting for you to do something with Sucker Punch. Like, what are you going to do? You can't play this thing safely without having to be like, oh, well, I took care of everything else, and now Dragapult can come in. That's not what Dragapult's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. It is not a late game sweeper kind of Pokemon. It's supposed to be a hyper offensive threat that also has utility elsewhere. But
yeah,
unfortunately, in this format, there's just better hyper offensive threats.
Hard agree.
So that leads us to number 3, Ferrothorn.
You wanted this one on here. I think Ferrothorn's fine where it's at. You wanted Ferrothorn on this list.
I think the number of people who are playing Ferrothorn haven't ran into enough Sacred Sword Zashians.
That is true. That may be true.
I think they're missing. I think they're missing out on like Zacian. You don't really like seeing opposing Incineroars, which is also very popular. Kyogre is running Ice Beam, which also just kind of blows you up. Like, granted, not nearly as bad as something like a Flare Blitz or a Sacred Sword, but you still are going to be taking a chunk. The walling potential of Ferrothorn is not what it used to be, and I think that's the biggest selling point of why I haven't even considered it for teams.
So, max HP for defense takes 83 to 98% from Sacred Sword. So you would have to invest a significant chunk into your defense to even make sure that just like almost a 2-hit KO.
But Carl, it's okay. I'm going to set up an Iron Defense.
Yeah, that totally is going to work.
Can you run that calc for me real quick?
I already am. It's the same
number.
Cool. Because Sacred Sword just ignores like all of those defense boosts and whatnot, and it's a super effective hit. Like, the bulky Zacians can just walk up and just 2-shot you most of the time.
Yeah, you just get bopped on the nose and then it doesn't matter.
Like, you can't even 3-hit bulky Zacians at +2.
Yeah,
you could 3-hit, you can't 2-hit.
Insane.
Whereas Sacred Sword just bops you. But you could eat a Behemoth Blade. You could definitely take Behemoth Blade.
Sure.
All day. Just to eat them all day. Just pray they don't have Sacred Sword. Pray they have Play Rough.
Or close combat. People who are playing close combat, stop it.
Get some help.
just play Sacred Sword. It's
so
better.
Close combat is still roll for 2-hit KO. At +2.
Oh my lord, that's insane.
Yep. What's number 2?
We have Seismitoad.
Okay, so this one's mine. I think we both wanted this one on this one, but I
Agreed,
know why this thing is being played and why it needs to stop.
Okay, talk me through it.
So
Seismitoad, I already agree with you. Go ahead.
Seismitoad is only seeing play because it is a Dynamax target on these teams.
Mm-hmm.
Seismitoad, it works a lot like Blastoise. It's not very good when it's not maxed. And it's not really picking up a ton of KOs, but what it does when it's maxed is just helps Kyogre. That's all its job is just to max Airstream, max Quake, hit opposing Kyogres if you're not carrying Thunder on yours, whatever. And so you're really kind of just like pigeonholed into maxing this thing or not bringing it at all. And if you're not bringing it, then you got to bring something else. But this is taking a slot in your team, so it just kind of feels like dead weight most of the time, especially if you see Pokemon like Rillaboom. Like, if your opponent has
if you see
any
Rillaboom,
grass
you just
type,
can't bring it.
You can't bring it at all. Like,
if they have
Venusaur,
Ferrothorn, you can't bring it. Cortana, it doesn't. Nope. Yeah, just stop it.
Yeah, just stop. Like, it's really good into the Pokemon teams running electric types on their teams because things like Zapdos, Thunder, you can't really deal with you too much. On the flip side, you can't really deal with them either, outside of like max geysering them. But at least you're not getting like max lightnings to the face. Instead, your Kyogre's getting blown up.
Yep.
It's not really worth it, in my opinion, to play Seismitoad in that slot. Play a Zapdos instead. If that's what you're really wanting to do to boost your Kyogre, play Zapdos. Play something that's not going to die to Rillaboom sitting across from you. Play something that's going to be able to maybe deal some extra damage and actually be useful outside of just clicking Bounce as a max move all the time.
Yep. But Carl, you have Max Quake for Zacian.
It's okay. It's like there's roles, I think, where you can pick it up. I'm pretty sure there's a role for it to pick up.
On the bulky ones?
I don't know on the bulky ones. That's what I'm checking.
I'm gonna say on bulky, I'm not optimistic.
That's modest. I need Stomping Tantrum.
And Jolly, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So you don't have to be Jolly. You can be Adamant.
Okay.
You're at 126 speed. You don't care about outspeeding Alecki. You only really care about outspeeding Cali's Shadow. Does that make sense? So you don't really have to worry about Alecki doing anything. Like, you can just pivot your Kyogre out and Max Quake into Alecki.
Yep.
And not a big deal. So the bulky variants, it is a roll to Oko with Life Orb.
Okay. I mean, that's better than I anticipated.
Okay, so if you are Life Orb, which most of them are, you can 100% pick up the KO.
Okay.
If you are not Life Orb, it is a roll. Which, most of the time, you are Life Orb, but there's like AV Seismitoad, since you're running all 4 attacks anyway. You can probably get away with that too. But definitely would recommend, if you're going to play this thing, play Life Orb and have really good grass answers. And that's hard to do on a team with a bunch of water types. and no real way to play fire. Zacian. And no real way to play fire because you set up rain.
So I think that brings us to our number 1.
This should be obvious. I feel like we've kind of ragged on it a little bit earlier, but
like, anyone who knows me knows where this is going.
So
I cannot stand Colossal in this format. I just don't think it's good. Please, please, please don't play it.
It almost has 2% usage.
That's 2% too many.
Yeah, agreed. I still think I agree. That is 2% too many. So Kyogre just eats this thing alive. You're not resisted hits to Behemoth Blade, so Zacian can be a problem sometimes.
Yep.
Zacian's Behemoth Blade, if you are no HP, no defense investment, does 69 to 82%.
That's insane.
Fun fact, Sacred Sword being a super effective hit means it does 84 to 99. So what you can do, there's a cool line here, is you can run like Whimsicott Zacian, Tailwind in front of the Colossal, and then just bop it. Depending on what it tries to do. If it tries to max, you just Behemoth Blade into it, because the Surf's going to put it in range to die. And if they don't max it, you could just Sacred Sword it and bop it.
Yep. I just don't think it's worth it.
The good news is if they don't respect your Colossal gets to max flare and just blow you up. But you have to do a lot to get to that point. And if there's like a Kyogre sitting across from you, you're just dead.
I wonder how much Aqua Jet from Urshifu does in the rain. Like, if you see Colossal, like, if you bring Colossal, they just swap in Kyogre. How dead are you to your own attack?
Aqua Jet does 48 to 57% in the rain.
just casually. Oh my god, dude, that's insane.
Just casually half your health. And this is why Colossal is not played anymore.
Oh my gosh. Absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Like, it's Max Vocalith is really, really good. There's like no rock types, so you're almost always getting chip off on something. You just gotta survive some hits to get it off.
Yep, and that's the biggest problem.
Like you either hit Vocalith and then die, or you try to hit Vocalith and die. That's there's no like heads up you win the game situation. It's kind of there, and then nope, tails you lose. That's just the sucky part about Colossal.
And like the comments are gonna be like, "Oh, but Colossal won a tournament." Sure. So
yeah.
Like it was played by one of the guys who's been playing Colossal forever.
Forever, yeah. Like it's the Wild West still too. Like
that doesn't mean it's
win.
good.
Anything can win right now if you play with it long enough.
Yep. If you are more skilled than your opponent with the team you are playing, then obviously you are going to potentially do much better than they do.
I think this format is very skill dependent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of luck and some team building skill involved, but player skill and reading your opponent and reading the situation is going to go a lot farther in this format than what we've seen in previous Dynamax formats, where your Dynamax can be easily stalled out because you have bulkier Pokemon and you have screens again, just kind of just stalling that stuff out.
Yep. I don't think it's worth it. I haven't been a fan of Colossal in a very, very long time, and I'm still not going to.
I like it, but not in this format.
Yep, that's just where I'm at.
Yep. Well, that was fun. Top 5s are fun.
That was enjoyable. I'm ready for the comments to roast us.
Yep, I'm ready. I'm ready to hear about how we're wrong on everything.
Because here's the best part: I don't get notifications for the stuff. You do, so I don't even get to see them. So
yeah,
it's very seldom that I actually log into the account and actually read comments and stuff.
Yep. Ready to talk about Team of the Week before we get out of here?
I am. I need to pull that up. What did I play this week?
Team of the Week is from Shadow Giraffe. It is
the
Kyurem White Groudon team.
Yes, it was very fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
So this team has got, obviously we have Kyurem White and Groudon, very, very powerful combo. Pairing alongside with those guys, we have Charizard, which you do not like, and Venusaur, which is fine. If you're going to play a Sun Abuser, I think Venusaur is probably your best option. Alongside with that stuff, we have an Incineroar with, I think that's Shuka Berry.
Yes, it is in fact Shuka.
And then Gastrodon with an Ogwaff Berry.
Yes. One of my big complaints about this team is we're very berry dependent in a format where Unnerve is like an actual ability you need to be prepared for.
Yeah.
Like obviously I think Citrus Groudon is probably like the best item for it. You could be White Herb, but I just don't think that's really worth it. I think I would rather have Citrus and Swords Dance than White Herb and whatever else. But
White Herb, you still run Sword Dance with White Herb.
Yeah, that's fair. Because like you still don't want to get double intimidated or whatever.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, like Charizard was fine. Venusaur like pulled its weight. Kyurem was really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm granted talking about like a week ago, so I'm trying to remember off of like what I played at the time. Incin is really good. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew?
I think there's a game I Dynamaxed Incineroar with this team. I can't remember though.
I think there was, and a lot of the games I think you maxed Gastrodon.
I know there's a non-zero where I maxed Gastrodon, and it was really good.
Which when looking at this team, you don't expect that. You think like,
no,
oh, I'm gonna max Charizard, or I'm gonna max Venusaur most of the time. And I don't think you maxed the Venusaur once, but you maxed the Charizard one game and then got proceeded to blow up.
Yep.
Because Regieleki's a Pokemon.
Yep. Who knew?
Uh, would you make any changes?
Oh man, I really want to just cut Charizard, but I don't know for what.
Aleki.
Like, I think that's a consideration.
You gotta you just have a second way to beat Kyogre.
That's very true.
Or technically third. Fourth. I don't know. However, having as many ways to beat Kyogre can never be a bad thing.
And like, as weird as it sounds, you still kind of get bodied by Zashian on this team, ignoring the fact that everything on your team can hit Zashian super effectively. You still just kind of get bodied by it a ton.
That's bad. When everything has a move for Zacian and it still doesn't help. That is not a good thing.
Yep, but it is what it is. I think the Zashian Kyogre matchup is really, really difficult. It takes a lot of really good skill to pilot it, and I don't know. It's not for me.
If you want to play this team, rental code is on screen. It will be it's on our Discord too. If you want to come check that out and find it there. If I remember to post it in the show notes, I will. If not, gives you an excuse to come watch the YouTube video to find it.
For sure. And that'll be out Wednesday, right? It's not last week's, or is it last week's?
No. That was last week's. We always do it after you've played them.
Yes.
Because if we talk about it before you play it, no one's going to watch the lapping video.
Correct. I don't know, man. Leave me alone.
Okay. You're ready to get out of here?
I've been out in the snow today. Leave me alone.
I was going to say, I'm ready to get out of here. I don't know about you.
I think I'm right there behind you. I haven't etten today, and I would really like to go do that. So
I gotta go cook dinner still. Yeah.
Yeah, same. That's literally what I'm going to do as soon as we clock off. So, as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, ring the bell for notifications when new stuff goes live, and comment down below talking about all of our lists and what you would change about them and what you think is good and what's not and everything else. If you're not listening on YouTube, what are you doing? Go do that. Also, thank you so much for listening on Spotify. Go leave us a 5-star review there.
Yeah, gotta plug that. I don't know if there's a like system on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, but you can do it there too. That'd be great. I
know you can leave reviews on Apple. I use Google, and there's nothing like that on Google. There's just like downloads, and like downloads are the big thing. Because if I remember correctly, based on how Anchor works, I think plays and downloads are two different things, and for Google it tracks downloads, not plays, which is weird. I don't know.
Anchor is weird right now because we have the video podcasts up on Anchor, which go through Spotify. So if you're watching on Spotify, you might actually be watching the video at the same time.
Very true. Very true. Really glad to be a part of that as well. So. If you're not already, go and follow us on Twitter at LR Lessons, myself at Mr. Missouri 25, Carlos at Musical VGC. You can come follow Carl and myself on Twitch as well. I am at Mr. Missouri 25, and Carl is at Musical there. And if you really like it, drop us a sub. It really does help us out. You can also always support us on Anchor as well for as little as 20 or 25 cents an episode. It, just helps keep the lights on, pays for everything that we have going on in the background and everything else. And then, of course, if you really like the show and you want to go above and beyond, check out the website, go down to the merch page, and get yourself a fancy t-shirt or a beanie or anything else we got going on. So
beanies are great. I'm still waiting on mine to get here. I think it's supposed to be here sometime after this episode will go up. So, unfortunately, I'm still wearing my Unis Honest beanie. Hopefully, next week we'll have my LRL beanie to wear.
Eventually, right? Slowly but surely. But
I mean, it's coming from Kentucky. How far away can that be?
Dude, you say that. My my EverDrive finally came in. It was coming from Ukraine.
Oh goodness, you're lucky you got here at all then, huh?
Very, in all actuality, that's basically what my free time the last few days has been, is getting that set up and played and everything else, and it's been great. Being able to play ROM hacks on actual hardware is really weird.
I want to get one for the big fat Game Boy, so just so I can do the same thing for just Game Boy games. Because I'm not really interested in playing all the advanced games or whatnot. Because I have the GameCube for that, but I just want to play red or blue, and not have to pack a million games with me for it.
It's really weird. From my understanding, the emulation that it uses for those versus like the Game Boy cartridge versus the Game Boy Advance cartridge. From my understanding, it runs better on the Game Boy cartridge itself because you're not having to use an emulator to emulate the game.
Yeah.
It's just like loading the ROM and running it on official hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like, okay, I had to have the emulator to be able to play it, to be able to access this appropriately. But like, I believe you also lose out on like a lot of the actual functionality as well, because I can play like NES games, I can play Master System games on here, so I can play like Sonic, which is really cool.
But that's what the Switch is for.
Exactly. But why do that when I can fit this in my pocket, you know? So
I will confirm to you right now, I can fit my Switch in my pocket.
I'm not going to attempt to. But yeah, I'm excited. This is probably going to go... I'm going to probably put this in my car now that I have a USB charger for my SP and play it during my breaks at work. So
well, there you go.
So I think I've rambled on here enough. I think it's about time we get out of here for the night. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll talk to you, let's see, Wednesday with some laddering and Friday with a deep dive, and we will see you all then. Have a good one. Peace.